Now, in the UK at the moment, foreign workers at the bookstore Waterstones are claiming their human rights are being abused because they are made speak English amongst each other by the bosses. The mainly Polish and Latvian workers are now accusing the bosses of human rights abuse. The bosses say that the reason they want foreign national staff only speaking English is because when they speak in their native language, other staff feel isolated and even intimidated. And the question is, who is right here? Should foreign nationals working here be forced to only speak English even during their lunch breaks? Or is this pure and utter discrimination to not allow them to speak to their friends in their native language? Or maybe you're somebody who does work with a lot of foreign workers and finds it, as the post on our Facebook suggests, very intimidating. Sadie wrote on Facebook, "Yep, I think they should speak English at all times. I had an experience in work where they spoke and laughed in their own language, and it's very annoying and embarrassing, especially when you know they're talking about you." Let me go to Rick. You're on FM104. How are you, Rick?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Very well, thank you. Now, you believe that this is discrimination. They should be allowed to speak whatever language they want.
If they're on their breaks and it's their free time, that's up to them. Companies shouldn't be dictating what language they can speak. Now, if they're serving customers and they're standing there and they're talking in a different language, yeah, that's a problem, because obviously the customer is going to feel intimidated. But surely in their free time and they're in their work, do what they want.
Okay, but say, let me give you an example of, say in a canteen on lunch break, yeah? In an office or wherever it is. And there are a load of people speaking, we'll use Polish as an example. They could be talking about anybody in the room and you wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, but then you could be doing the same thing.
No, because they understand English. No. You couldn't be doing the same thing because they understand English perfectly well.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter where you go. You've always got people sitting in the canteen talking about other people. Whether it's in your language or not your language. You're always going to be looking at people thinking, are they talking to me? But it's their free time.
So they should be allowed to do what they want when they speak their language whenever they want.
Well, not in their free time. Yes, definitely. They're on a break. Sometimes if they're on a break, they're not getting paid for being there or whatever. And when they are getting paid, yeah, they should speak English. In front of customers, things like that. But apart from that, if it's their free time.
All right, stay there for 1 second. Mario, you're on FM104. How are you?
Hello, Andrew.
Good, Mario. Now, what did you want to say on this? You are Polish yourself.
Yeah, I'm Polish.
And what do you think about this?
I think it's ridiculous to talk other language at work. Work is no playground, no gym, So if I'm going to come to work and everybody speak English, I have to speak English because later is misunderstanding. Maybe the other people, other nationality, think that I am laughing of them because, look, when you talk in different language, it look funny for other people. Sometimes we're laughing and other people think that we're talking about them. So I don't think that...
And in fact, that's exactly the point that the lady who put a posting on our Facebook was saying. She knew full well that the people in her work, in her canteen, were actually talking about her. And she found it very, very intimidating.
Probably they didn't talk about her, maybe. But even when I work in lots of different nationality, even Polish, if the Polish start talk to me next to Irish person, I just give him answer English.
All right, so you deliberately answer in English?
Of course.
Because you know that some people might be a bit put out by this.
Of course.
Now, Rick, if nothing else, it's manners, is it not?
I can understand, obviously, if you're in a workplace and you're standing behind a counter and you've got customers queuing up, and you've got someone there speaking to his friend in a totally different language, that's going to look rude. But if you're in a workplace and you've been given a break and you're sitting there in your canteen or wherever, just chatting with your friends in a totally different language, the language that everyone understands, between them, I can't see the problem in that.
But Mario, you obviously think it's bad manners to speak in Polish where you're surrounded by people who speak English.
Of course, it's the bad manners, and even you are in the canteen, you're still at work, and you're supposed to can be just misunderstanding if you're talking to Polish, even different topic. People will be sitting around you when they see you when you're laughing.
Yes, so yeah, you're having a conversation with somebody in Polish and you're laughing. The people behind you might feel a bit intimidated because they think you might be talking about them.
Of course, and sometimes you're laughing and you're watching that people. Maybe what is the reaction of that people when you're laughing? Sometimes different mean. Maybe I am too noisy, but people can think that I'm laughing of them, and then it's misunderstanding.
Now, I have to be honest with you, Rick. I've actually had this situation, not in work, right, but in a social situation where I'd be with people who are Lithuanian, okay, and there might be 3 or 4 of them, and they'd start breaking into conversations of their own language, and I know full well they're not talking about me, but you haven't a clue whether they are or not. They could be saying anything.
If they're in a working situation and you're being served as a customer or whatever they're doing, then I can understand having a problem with it. But sitting in the staff canteen on their own, having a chat between themselves, what's the problem? That's who's got a problem with that?
It's not only on the canteen.
I mean, here's a guy who is Polish who is saying that he thinks it's rude. It's a rude thing to do because people behind you...
From personal experience, I lived in Spain for 5 years. When I first got there for the first 2 or 3 months, I didn't have a clue what they were saying.
That's different. You're in their country. Hang on. That's
to learn what they are saying.
Yeah, but that's different because you were in their country. Do you know what I mean? Over here, we speak English, and when people choose to speak their own language, then we haven't a clue what they're talking about. I mean, you've just heard what Mario said, that it can be viewed as being very rude and somewhat intimidating.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can hear what he's saying, but I mean, I just, if Mario's sitting in the canteen with his friend in the corner chatting in the language that they both speak, I can't see the issue that somebody else would have.
All right, but let me bring in some more. Let me bring in some more calls.
Why is anyone listening?
All right, hang on there for a second. Let me go to Jude. You're on FM104. Jude, how are you?
Hello, Adrian.
Grand, thanks. Now, what did you want to say on this?
I totally agree with that gentleman, Rick. What does it matter if people don't understand the language? Someone's in the canteen on a break with other people of that country or whatever, it's their time. But if you don't understand the language, is that more ignorance on your behalf? What does it matter what they're saying? If you're not involved in the conversation, it's none of your business. What does it matter?
I know, but it can be very intimidating if you think for some reason they might be talking about you.
But then that's your insecurities. Let's face it, isn't German, Italian, Polish all recognised languages, officially and legally recognised languages?
Yeah. That's all well and good, Jude. But
why should it be?
It doesn't. I know loads of people have been in this situation, and the only example I can give you is in a social situation with a group of Lithuanians talking their own language, and it can be quite intimidating.
But if they're having a conversation with themselves, right, and it's their conversation, why would anyone want to be interested in what they're saying? Isn't it that their business? I think, if you're serving a customer and it's your job to speak English and your work requires you to speak that language, well and good, you have to speak that language. But if you're on your own time in a canteen, I don't think it's anyone else's business. And if people are so worried about why don't they go up in their language, because I think it's ignorance because people aren't multilingual over in this country.
Okay, but say for example they could be sitting in the canteen or at work or whatever. Well, let me ask you. Let's say a spar shop, just a random spar shop, okay? And behind the counter there are 2 Polish blokes. And do you think that they should be allowed to talk to each other? Now, not to customers, but to each other in Polish?
Yes, once the customer can understand what they're saying in English, yes, but what does it matter to the customer?
But they can talk to each other behind the counter in Polish.
No, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
You wouldn't have a problem. So their boss could be walking past them, and they could be saying, "That's an awful prick, that fella. I can't stand him. I'd love him to slip on the wet floor there."
But isn't it other people's insecurities? I can't understand if they're...
No, just listen, just hear, just follow that argument. If if your boss walked past and you said that in English, you'd be in big trouble, okay?
But if he heard me, I'd say it in a different language.
But that's the point I'm trying to make. That you should, do you know what I mean? Should they be able to have a conversation like that behind the counter I'm just saying a random spar shop, and say to each other, God, I can't stand that boss of ours. I hope he slips in that water on the ground because I can't stand him. He's a dickhead. Should they be able to say that to each other behind the counter?
No, but they try to be. Say if a person who just spoke English, say, or an Irish person, that's going to stop them from thinking of it. Just because they should be allowed to speak their own language amongst themselves in their own time. What is wrong with it? Why would you want to be interested in someone else's conversation if it doesn't involve you? Like, why would you?
Yeah, but the thing is, it might involve you, but you don't know about it.
And that's down to ignorance because you can't speak their language. There's loads of people in this country, even Irish people that can speak German, French, Polish, loads of them. It's just that we are so insular. Very few Irish people can, like there are a good few, but there's not too many people out there, Irish people, who can speak German, Italian or Polish. And just because they can't doesn't mean, okay, they might feel insecure, but why does that stop anyone?
No, but the argument you can use, Jude, is when in Rome you do as the Romans do, and we speak English in this country.
So does that mean that when we go abroad or whatever, everyone else should? Why should they're speaking English? If their job requires you to speak English in your job, speak English. Great, you have to do it. That's a job requirement. But if you're on your own time in a canteen or on, say, a social event or whatever, you should be entitled to speak your own language. In fact, it's a human right, free speech. There is no law in a democratic society, especially in Europe, can ban you from speaking your own language where it's not work related. I can't understand. I wouldn't even say a law exists that a company could say you cannot speak your own language to another fellow countryman in a private area or in a canteen. It would be against all EU laws because it's a recognised language. It's ignorance on part of Irish people just because they can't understand the language. And why would you want to be involved in a conversation that you aren't even invited to be in? Because I'm sure if they wanted you to be invited into that conversation, they'd speak English to you.
All right, stay there for a moment. Jimmy, you're on FM104. How are you, Jimmy?
Hi, Adrian.
Good, Jimmy. Now, you're from Albania.
Yep.
And what did you want to say on this?
I want to say I agree with the Jude. Where nobody can tell me I don't have to speak my language or not. At the time when I'm not saying to you in your face in my language and I'm not have the courage to tell you if I'm slagging you, I am the loser. But I'm not agree with that English guy we was in the phone. Was English or not? The first guy was speaking.
Are you English, Rick? I don't know. Not so much. Makes any difference. Yeah, but okay, right. Yeah, go on. What?
Now, what happened now? The English people, not all the people, but some of the like him, where they love to dominate everything, to know everything. Like what happened? If I'm trying to speak all the time English, of course, because I don't have no one from my family here. I only know myself. From 7 years, if I say only English, of course I can lose my language first. And I don't want to lose like what happened in.
Sorry, are you there, Jimmy? Hello? Jimmy? No, he's not.
You can hear me, but you speak it out straight away.
There you are. Go on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Now, I don't want to lose the language, how the Irish lose English, the Irish. Can you hear me?
Yes, but why do you have to do it in the workplace, Jimmy? That's the argument. This isn't about you speaking to your wife in Albanian. That's your own business.
Yeah, but I'm speaking with my friend, with my stories. I can speak more better and I can explain more the jokes. We can laugh, we can tell stories. Has nothing to do with different people who are beside me. And nothing to do. Why do you have to know me what I'm saying? And the time when I'm saying nothing for you. It's so simple.
Yes, but can you understand how some people can find it quite intimidating?
Yeah, because they are very curious. People want to know everything. People want to dominate everything. That's not good. You have to mind their business and not my business. My business is my business. I'm not saying nothing for you or to anybody.
Okay, do you think that, and I'm just using this as an example, two foreign guys, two Polish guys working in a spar shop behind the counter in the shop, do you think they should be able to speak to each other in their own language behind the counter?
Not for me. It's no problem if he's so Polish. In the time when he don't have nothing to say for me, or if he can say something for me and I don't understand what he said, no problem. If he don't have the courage to tell me in my face, no problem for me. No problem at all. In the time when I don't understand, I mind my business. I'm happy. I take my cigarette or the chocolate or the bar, what I want to take, and I'm going. That's it. Very enough. No problem what he says. He can say anything. The time when he don't say to me in English, I am a dickhead. I'm sorry, my language. No problem. If he can say in his language, if he has the balls to tell me in the phone, That's the difference.
Barbara, you're on FM104. How are you, Barbara?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. You know, I absolutely agree they should have to speak English when they're in the canteen, you know. I have a couple of friends, right, in a supermarket. Now, I don't actually work in a supermarket, but I just happen to know them, you know, I go in every day. And happen to say, they were saying, oh, God, Barbara, it's a nightmare when you go to the canteen with they're Latvians or Polish, because the way the sort of the system works, it's not a big supermarket. So say, for example, there might be 2 Polish that go up to the canteen and maybe only 1 Irish person, you know, the way it goes. And they're just totally excluded. You know, they don't interact with any of them. They just sort of sit in the corner, speak their own language.
But the argument that I heard a while ago from that guy Jimmy was that if he wants to talk to you, he'll talk to you. If he's not conversing directly at you, then it's none of your business what he's talking about.
Yeah, but you think about it, you know, if there's 2 people in the canteen, right, then the normal, you know, English person, right, when I used to work, you know, if I went up to the canteen, whoever was there, you'd say hello, you'd sit down beside them, because obviously we all work in the same environment, right, so we all know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to leave, you know, if you're sitting at the corner, right, well then as soon as you go upstairs, right, to get your coffee or sit down, you are excluded, right? Because they're not bringing you into the conversation.
But is it not your insecurity that?
No, I don't think so. I can totally understand, right? You know, I've worked in a lot of places, and they do stick together, right? They really don't really want to be friendly with you, even when you try to be friendly with them, right? They sort of on their own, and they're sort of quite happy to be on their own. You know, if you look in Ireland, there's not a lot of foreign people that have, you know, Irish friends, and it's not that we don't want to be friends with them. It's that they're just quite happy in their own environment. I have, for example, you know, I live in an apartment, and you know, I have a couple of, you know, foreign people live upstairs, and whereas they're quite friendly, say hello to me, and the other girl, she speaks very good English. Now, as soon as the other girl comes downstairs, she'll say hello to me, and straight away I'm excluded because she just talks Lithuanian.
Okay, but I would argue that if the roles were reversed, Barbara, and you were living in Poland, and obviously you'd have to learn a bit of Polish in order to get a job and what have you, and there were other people living in the apartment block that you were living in from Ireland, you're not going to talk to them in Polish, are you?
No. Another point, my husband is actually a foreign, right? And we've been together 15 years, right? Have 2 children. And if I go and see his friends, I go to lots of parties. Every single one of them, because I'm not very good at the language, every single one of them would never speak in their own tongue when I'm in the company.
Okay, so you obviously see this as just bad manners, do you?
Well, absolutely, because when I go abroad, when I go to his country, they excuse themselves. I'm sorry. They are trying to speak English to me, you know. Mm-hmm. They don't want to exclude me. Do you understand? Because they know it's rude, right? If you're the only person there, right? And the point is that the majority of these people can speak very, very good English. Now, I can understand. Yes, no,
and I agree, especially in a lot of shops and a lot of offices. In fact, the calls we've had on all spoke perfectly good English.
They speak.
So you think that...
yes. After a while, you know, they really, really do. I can understand if someone said, you know, I'm only have to come over and I can't speak the lingo, because when I met my husband first, he couldn't really speak any English, right? So you totally could excuse him. Now he only works with Irish people. And he's like an Irish person now, even the slang words he comes out with, because he wanted to learn, right? Okay,
but you believe that even in a situation of lunch break or whatever...
Oh, I think, I absolutely believe that when people come over here, right, and if I went to a foreign country, it's my job to learn that language, right? You know, and when they come over, you need to interact, right? You're meant to be coming over to join into a society, yes? Not to, exclude yourself, right? I'm just here to work, and I really don't want to talk to you because I want to speak to my Polish or Latvian.
Okay, you find it, you think it can be quite intimidating?
Absolutely. You know, such a way.
All right, we'll stay there for 1 second because Anthony, you're on FM104. How are you, Anthony?
How's it going, Adrian?
Now, Anthony, you've just heard what that lady said. If you're in a canteen or whatever, and some of your workmates are speaking in their own language, it can be very intimidating. They should be made to speak English while they're in the workplace.
It is. That should be the way it is over here, Adrian. Because they wouldn't like it if I was a fluent person speaking Irish, my language. Do you know what I mean? So it's it works both ways. Do you know what I mean? Like there you had a lad on. His English wasn't all that good, but over here you're supposed to get a job when your English is supposed to be grand. You know what I mean? So, to be honest, Adrian, it's just to me, it's very, very bad manners, to be honest with you, because it happened to me in a canteen a couple of times myself. I was in work or whatever, do you know what I mean? And next of all, you'd hear them sniggering or whatever, and you'd look over and they'd look and then they'd laugh and they'd be there, blah, 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 you know what I mean? And it's really just...
Yeah, but they might be just having a giggle and a laugh amongst themselves.
Yeah, but Adrian, if they're having a chat or whatever in their own language, right, and then you look over at them and they look at you and they look at each other and start laughing, that's going to make you mad paranoid. It'd make me mad paranoid anyway. Because honestly, Adrian, would they if I was if I could speak fluent Irish, or any of my workmates that could speak fluent Irish, would they like it? If I was speaking Irish, my language.
Yeah, but you'd be entitled to. You live in Ireland. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But
the sad reality is, as somebody said earlier on, Anthony, most of us can't. So it's a mute point, really. Bernard, you're on FM 104. How are you, Bernard?
How are you doing, Adrian? It's a very interesting topic, and I have a couple of angles on it.
Go on.
First of all, I agree with the manners part of it. It's better etiquette if you're in a group of more than two pairs of people. If you're in an English-speaking country, to speak the dominant language. But it's their time, it's their tongue, and if they're in this country, our constitution supports the right of free speech. I work with people from Eastern Europe, Africa and Ireland. And what I did was I think the majority of people in this country are actually paranoid that someone's talking about them. They might actually be talking about something a bit more useful than us.
Yeah, and even if they're having a laugh and a joke, it's most likely nothing to do with you at all.
Probably, and as the caller said earlier on, if you wanted to know what he's talking about, he'd explain it to you. And I work with a few Eastern Europeans, and I went to trouble of learning a few phrases and a few bits of bad language in their tongue, and we had a bit of banter about it. It just happened to be Polish. It could have been there's a few other languages there as well. And the gentleman I work with is a fluent Irish speaker, and when I meet him, I have a banter of him in what battered around Irish that I have, which isn't very much. But if they want to speak in whatever language they want to speak in, as long as it's not dealing with the public, I don't really think anyone should have an issue.
Does that apply even in the workplace? And the example I gave earlier on, just off the top of my head, a random spar shop, two lads, Polish, behind the counter, and they're having a yap in their own language. And they're not serving customers, but the boss is over the other side of the shop, and they're able to say, what a dickhead he is. Can't stand him.
They could equally be saying, will you throw us over that box of flakes? I want to put there's no flake up on this counter.
He could be.
Yeah, if you're that paranoid about what they're saying, and if they want you to know what you're going to say, they're going to say it and make sure that you hear it. So the random spar shop, if they're
well, okay, Barbara, people should
just one point before I go. If the guys in the shop it's a bookshop in the UK, I think you said it was originally.
Yes, Waterstones, yeah.
Yeah, if the guys are on their lunch break, on their they're on their time. The company's not paying them, so they can speak in any language they want, or they can go where they want, provided it's not written in their contract, because it's their time and it's not company time.
Yeah, but the point... Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Barbara, yeah.
The point, I think people are missing, right? I can understand if the whole of the shop was closed down, right, and, there's 20 of them and 20 of them. I'm talking about reality here, right? Reality is, right, if you're working in the spar shop or a supermarket, there's only a certain amount of people can go on their breaks. You're going on your break from delicatessens now, and Sheila down there in the fruit department, you're going as well, and somebody else, right? Now, you've got, say, two Polish, say, for example, right? One Irish person, right? And this is probably where the problem is coming in Waterstones in London as well, right? That it's not that there's a big crowd of equal. It comes that two or three people are having the breaks, right? And the one person is feeling a bit intimidated because, as you know yourself, if it was 3 Irish or 3 English people on the break, that would not be a problem because everybody would interact together. And the problem is, there's obviously some problem over there that when they're having the breaks, right, these 2 people or 2 or 3 and maybe 1 or whatever is on the break and they're feeling like isolated, really. Now, I can totally understand that.
Yeah, well,
I can't understand why no one else can understand that.
Can I just add one more thing to that? I could bring you down and put you into a canteen factory. We'll take Cork and take West Cork, and I guarantee you, and they're speaking English.
No, that's a fair point. That's a very fair point.
But sorry, I didn't catch that.
He's basically saying you go to somewhere in West Cork and you're stuck in a canteen with people. Half them you won't have a clue what they're saying, and they're speaking English.
Yeah, but I mean, but I think, I still have to disagree. I think, anywhere, Irish is a very friendly country, and I think if you went in, everybody would come on and, how many times have you been in a new job? Come on and sit down beside me and all that. Well, that's what I would have got, right?
Okay, but you believe that even on their lunch break, well, especially if they're in a staff canteen, that staff should be told they have to speak English, even on their own time at lunch break?
Yeah, because obviously, that's Waterstones. Now, I'm talking about a supermarket, right? An upmarket supermarket. And these women have worked there, right, for 20 and 30 years, right? And they're feeling intimidated because it just so happens there's more foreign in the shop now than there is Irish. So when they go on their break, nobody talks to them. And this is the problem, that I feel that's a bit bad because, I feel when people come over to this country, they should interact. It's not meant to be like the Polish in one little pocket, Lithuanians, we all stick together.
Okay, isn't she right, Bernard, in what she's saying? That it doesn't make for good working relationships if you've little pockets of Lithuanians and little pockets of Polish people and them all saying, speaking in their own language, right?
I agree with the lady that they should integrate, but I just have to defend the rights of people that it's not compulsory. You don't have to talk to someone on your break if you don't want to.
But you can argue. But hang on, Bernard. You can argue that staff rules dictate that you have to wear a uniform. You mightn't like the clothes they're telling you to wear, but you have to bloody wear them if you want the job.
You have to wear. Yeah, you have to wear it. But on shop floors and when you're dealing with the public, you deal with them in the dominant language, which in this country would be English. And I agree with your point that it would be better manners, but I also have to say that it's not compulsory. And I do agree with you that it's better manners, but I don't think an employer should have the right to dictate what language staff speak on their recreational time.
The reason why this is happening, right, is because, there is obviously complaints.
Yeah, from whom?
There's complaints.
Well, there have been complaints in this particular case in Waterstones. There have been complaints from English staff who say that they feel isolated and even intimidated.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I lived in London a long time. That's a very big and a very nice bookshop, right? So, and people, remember in life, people don't complain for nothing. People do not like to go and feel they're complaining about, foreign people or they're not interacting because they are made feel uncomfortable and they're made feel uncomfortable.
Okay, so you believe that they should be forced to speak English full stop when they're in work?
Because, at the end of the day, they can go home, they have their own life, and then they can speak whatever they want to speak, right? They wanted to work in this, job, right? Which means they need to interact.
Okay, stay there for a moment. Let me go to Liam. You're on FM104, Liam. How are you?
Not too bad, Adrian.
Good, Liam. Now, what did you want to say on this? You believe that if they're on their break, it's nobody's business?
If they're on the break and they want to talk in French or Polish or Lithuanian, it's none of their business.
Even if it's a staff canteen?
Staff canteen, none of their business. Even if they're out in the shed having a smoke break. I personally think if the employees have... if the employer has a problem where he should have it in the job description before they even start, stating that they should
But okay, you've heard from people like Barbara, a couple of people we had on earlier on, saying that they find it quite intimidating to have a group of Polish or Lithuanian or whatever sitting in a little group, giggling and laughing and whatever. They could be talking about anything. Maybe it's paranoia, but it makes people feel, as according to the staff in Waterstones in England, isolated and even intimidated.
I'd say the Lithuanians or the Polish probably feel the same way about the English staff when they're sitting there at the canteen table talking English and laughing and joking. I think it goes both ways, really. Yeah,
but they understand English better than we understand Polish.
Maybe they do, but I honestly think they should be allowed to talk whatever language they want. And I think it's a paranoia thing.
Well, there you go, Barbara. It's a paranoia thing.
Absolutely not, right? I've worked in London, and you cannot get more confident people in London, right? They'd show us a thing or two. Absolutely not, right? And Waterstones is a very good shop. So these are not, little people just, down the road here, right? These people are well educated that's in this shop, right?
I don't think they are, Barbara.
That these people are, saying they feel intimidated. It's not about intimidation and your insecurities, right? I keep explaining to you, right? If you're in a shop and people have to go on their breaks, right? Two have to go and maybe one English person, and they're feeling isolated. I don't know why you can't understand that. If you went up on your break, right, and there was another two guys in the canteen, right, the nice thing to say is sit down beside us, have a cup of tea. You could find
no, I understand the point you're making, right? But Liam, let me just read this text to you and see what you say to this. It's the Polish people, or the foreign people, it should be, I mean, this isn't just about Polish people, who are perfectly fluent in English that I have a problem with. Even though I do accept the minority speaking Polish who have a problem with the English language, anyone very fluent in English, speaking their language in front of you, clearly have something to hide. Why would they want to speak their own language if they're perfectly fluent in English?
It depends on who they're sitting at the table with. I suppose if they're sitting at the table with their friend who's Lithuanian and,
But this texter finishes off by saying it's the height of ignorance. In other words, somebody who has a perfectly good grasp of English, is able to speak it perfectly well, breaking into their own language with another Polish person or Lithuanian or whatever, you have to think, why are they doing that?
Yeah. Look, a company like Waterstones, Adrian, I don't know much about them, but they're probably a big book company in England.
They are, yeah.
But do you not think then a company like that, do you not think that's a problem that's easily solved? Like,
how?
We've already heard these people just to let them know, look, when you're in the staff canteen, you have to talk English. Have it in the job description. Instead of saying to the people when they've started the job,
All
right, now, Mohammed, you're on FM104. How are you?
Not too bad. Yourself, Adrian?
Very well, thank you, Mohammed. Now, you're clearly a foreign national.
I am, yeah.
And you think that you should not be allowed to speak your own language. You should be made to speak English.
That's right. That's definitely, because I'm being myself in a situation like where there were guys like they were speaking a foreign language and I couldn't understand them. And that actually really gave me a headache, and I could see myself that how would that feel to different people? Like if I'm speaking my own language, like I work in an environment where I work with a lot of people from my country, but I would prefer to speak in English. Like sometimes there would be an argument that like I'm trying to show off or something, but we are living in this country, and if people are around us or around me who can't understand my language, then I try to speak in English. And I should speak in English, and that's
and the point being, you're perfectly articulate in English. So, and that was the point that texter made a couple of minutes ago. The problem she has, I don't know if it's a fella or a girl, who texted in a minute ago, is not necessarily the people who don't have a good grasp of English slipping into their own language, but the people like you who have perfect English.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I have perfect English, because I try to speak English. Like if I was keep speaking in my own language or living with the people with the same language I speak, I wouldn't be able to improve my English. And that's the only reason. Like if you're living in this country, you definitely need to improve English to get on with life, So
you think it's very rude of people to lapse into their own language with work colleagues around them?
It's rude as well. Like as long as it's not just giving other people headache, but it's rude too. You need to get them involved in what you are talking about, or or ask them if they are okay,
I don't think even if there should be a question to ask them if they can speak English. They should. If they can, they should. If they can't, even they should try. That's the way they need to improve. They are not able to go to colleges or school to learn English here. That's the work environment is the best place to learn English.
Now there you go, Liam. Do you not agree that it's the height of ignorance? Liam, are you still there? Oh, he's not. Okay, stay there for a second, Mohammed. Let me go to Richard. You're on FM104, Richard. How are you?
Hi, Adrian. I'm fine.
Now, Richard, you can hear what Mohammed is saying there. He's a foreign national, and he actually thinks it's rude to be speaking in your own language.
I just think it's crazy. Like where I worked, and I worked there for 7 years, and I was like 50-50 with East European and Irish. But what we did was they brought that rule in a year and a half ago, the company did. There was a certain clique of people in there that didn't want Polish people speaking around them in their own, i.e., as I put it down to paranoia again. They were paranoid that they were talking about them and stuff. And this rule was brought in, I think it lasted 2 weeks. And a certain sect of the Irish people that were there complained about it. Everyone has the right to speak their own language to someone else. I put it to use that if you were walking in Poland or Germany with a couple of Irish lads, would you be expected to speak Polish on your break, even if you weren't very good at it? Not at all. Crazy.
But, as you can hear from Mohammed, are you still there, Mohammed?
Yeah.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, Mohammed's English is absolutely perfect, okay? I can understand every single word the man is saying. Now, he believes it's wrong to be slipping into your own language. Why would he need to when his English is very good?
That's fine, but some people they're more comfortable speaking in their own language, though, even if they are good at it. Who's the right to say to them you can't speak Polish or Latvian?
No, nobody's saying you can't do it at home. Nobody's saying you can't do it when you go out to the pub.
Not at home, but like in the workplace, especially if you're dealing with public, yeah, maybe. But if you're just in a normal, like in a factory or something, and you work with a few Polish, you have the right to speak fucking Polish. Oh, sorry for course, you have the right to speak Polish. I'm adamant on this. I made a lot of friends in where I worked. A lot of my friends are Polish now. I've gone to Poland for weddings and stuff. I had a great time with them. Yeah, even though I have parties up in the house and stuff, they'd be speaking Polish and stuff to each other. I wouldn't mind. I'm not paranoid about it.
No, and nobody's saying it's even to do with well, some people are saying it's to do with paranoia, but is it not just bad manners? And I've been in the company, like yourself, of people from other countries who start rabbiting on in their own language, and I find it quite rude.
Well, maybe, but at the same time,
because they can speak perfectly well in English, so why would they be talking in their own language if for no other reason than to exclude you?
Then again, it's different as well as that. There's different dialects in Poland. Like the person from the north of Poland, they have different sayings, different things, even in their own language to someone from the south.
Oh no, I know they do. Just like we do here in Ireland. It's very hard to understand people from Cork.
I'm amused by it. I suppose we were working in England and the English didn't want the Irish speaking. No, you can look at it that way as well.
Liam, is it Liam?
Richard.
Yeah, like if that would their language would help them to work, like in a working environment, they sometimes it's hard for them to speak English. Their English is not good. Sometimes
that's what I say. Yeah.
They can use the language, but like if there's any other Irish people around or people who can't understand and they could speak English, or if there is a time for them to speak English, they should speak English. Like if sometimes in a hurry and something needs to be done in quicker time, then maybe yes, like just for the sake of work.
Oh no, we had that in our job, Adrian, where there was we'd have one person that was really good at English, and we used to get a lot of people in from agencies, and they'd be working in the factory, and we'd have him explain because the Polish. Their English was really, really bad, like when they first started, and it'd take them a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, and then they'd eventually get the gist of it.
No, and I do understand that for guys, and this is the point that somebody made earlier on a text, that I don't have a problem, said this person, with the people who haven't a great command of English, speaking their own language. My big issue is the people who can speak perfect English, choosing to speak in their own language.
Yeah.
Well, it's their God-given right. If they want to speak it in their own language, they can.
But I mean, here's Mohammed, who's even saying he agrees that it's wrong. He's living in this country, our main language is English, and people should speak the language. That's really your point, Mohammed, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, I'm here like 6-7 years, and I try to communicate with Irish people in English as much as possible, because I'm willing to stay here and I'm willing to learn language and the culture. So it's important, if you're living here, so you need to communicate, especially in the working environment. Yeah.
Mohammed, that's your choice, but you shouldn't be. That's your choice to do that. You shouldn't be forced.
Yeah, but I'm talking
to do it. And as someone said earlier on, the freedom of speech.
Yeah, I'm being in a situation myself where I couldn't understand the conversation was going around in the group I was. So it actually gave me a headache, and then I don't know if you were in a situation like that. Maybe in working environment, you probably know the guys what they were talking about. But in normal, if you have a little bit. Huh?
Sometimes you would, right? But at the same time, you just don't care about it. So if they're talking, if people are thinking that they're talking about them, there's something wrong with them. That's the way I see it. Why would they have this chip on the shoulder?
And you think the only reason people have a problem with this is paranoia?
Paranoia and racism. There's a lot of words, a lot are racist towards them.
I agree with you. No, I do agree with you on that point.
I was myself.
Okay, I agree with you. But do you not understand where people are coming from? Like the text, the Facebook thing from earlier on said, I think they should speak English at all times. I had an experience in work where they spoke and laughed in their own language, and it's very annoying and embarrassing, especially when you know they're talking about you.
Well, how did they know they're talking about you?
I don't know, but...
Are they psychic?
I don't know.
Maybe that's what I'm saying. That's paranoia. At the end of the day, because if they're sitting there having if I'm sitting in the canteen, I couldn't give two hoots what other people are saying. I'm there having my lunch, have the crack whoever I'm sitting with. I don't be on about Jesus. What are they talking about? What are they talking about? Now,
okay, Mohammed, do you think it is reasonable to tell people not even to speak English in a staff canteen at lunchtime?
Well, if they're in a group, if there are the people who can't speak their language, I think it's rude to talk their own in Polish or in I'm from Pakistan, so I would like to talk in English. I would like to get everybody involved into communication.
All right, and one last call on this. Banji, you're on FM104. How are you?
Hello, Adrian.
Grand, thank you. Now, what did you want to say on this?
Well, you see, I've always, argued it, with my friends that, I consider it rude, impolite and, uncivilized, for people to speak, other languages, around people where they don't understand what you're saying. Say when you are in a work environment, in a factory where you have, 50, 40 people, on the floor. Okay, and you have Polish people here, you have Chinese people there, you have Nigeria on the other end, and everyone is allowed to speak their language. There's going to be chaos in that place. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, but what country are you from?
I'm from Nigeria.
You're from Nigeria?
I am from Nigeria.
Now English will be one of your native tongues, would it not? Well, one of your first languages.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's not really as big an issue for you, is it?
Well, see, I tell you something. You see, I'm from the part of Nigeria where we speak a language called Yoruba, okay? My wife is from, the same place as me. She speaks Yoruba as well, okay? But she's got a different dialect entirely. That when she speaks with, people from our part of the country, I just don't understand what she's saying. And I hate her speaking, the dialect when I'm around, with other people. Or, say 4 of you are sitting on the table and 2 people, speak, different language from you. And they're communicating across the table and just be looking at them like you're a fool.
Okay, so you think that they should be able to speak their own language, especially when they're on their lunch break?
That is it.
Okay.
When you're on your own, you do whatever you want. But when you're in the midst of people, you should, be polite and be civil enough and, carry them along and speak, English. All
right. Thanks very much indeed for your call, Banji, and Mohammed and Barbara and Richard and all of you for your calls. That was a 50-50 discussion, I have to say. A lot of people think that, especially on your lunch break, you should be able to speak whatever language you want. When you're behind the counter in the shop or working in the office, it might be a different story, but when you're on your lunch break, you should be able to do what you want, I think was the majority opinion, I think.